So in the last video, we learned about callbacks. In this video, we're going to learn about what it means to run asynchronous code in JavaScript. Now in JavaScript 1, you should have learned about the event loop. It's kind of the mechanism, if I were to sum it up, it's basically the mechanism behind JavaScript that dictates what code gets executed when. But what I would actually highly recommend everyone do is I'll share a link to this video in the description of this video. Watch this. It's going to really help in your understanding what the event loop is. I know it's one of those concepts that's kind of easy to gloss over in classes, so it may not have been something that you remember too much about. Definitely watch this video because it's really going to help not only in the understanding of this video, but also in JavaScript 3 when you start learning about promises and dealing with APIs. But here, we're mainly focusing on the difference between synchronous and asynchronous code. In our case here, I'm going to start by creating an example of synchronous code. So when I say synchronous code, I just mean code that executes one line after another. So if I do console.log first, we do, do that. We do, let's do second. We do third. When I save this, we expect first, second, and third to be executed in that order. That's nothing new. This is exactly what we've seen so far. However, the way the event loop works in JavaScript is it can block certain things from happening. And like I mentioned in the video about callbacks, callbacks give us a way to execute some sort of function after an event. And sometimes we don't want that event to be blocked by anything. We want to be able to continue to execute our code if something happens to be blocking our event loop. So the easiest way to illustrate an example of what asynchronous code can look like in JavaScript is by using the built-in method setTimeout. So as with everything, mdn setTimeout. I highly recommend you read the docs on it, play around with it a little bit. But we can see in the documentation here, the setTimeout method sets a timer which executes a function or specified piece of code once the timer expired. So let's go back to our example here where we've got a couple of console.logs. I'm going to setTimeout is available to us magically, just like documents available to us magically. So we'll do setTimeout. We'll call it the first argument to setTimeout is actually a function. So this is a bit tricky to read, but we can see the first is a function, and then the second is a delay. So here's what we'll do. So we'll first start by passing a function, and in our function here, we're just going to do the same console.log, but this time we're going to pass a delay of, let's say, 5 seconds. So we go back here, we see first and third is logged out right away, and after a long period of time, we get second. So when I say asynchronous, all I mean is code that is executed after some period of time. And this becomes most relevant later on when you'll begin to work with APIs and databases and services. Maybe you've got a small project that you want to work on and you want to interact with an API that sends you today's weather. Well, we need asynchronous JavaScript to be able to do that because making a request to that service takes time. And if we were to do that synchronously, that would mean our whole app would have to freeze for the 1, maybe 2 seconds, or many more if you're on a slow connection, it would take to get that response back. And by using and leveraging the power of the event loop in JavaScript and asynchronous code, we're able to wait until we get the response back and then call a function. So in the case of setTimeout, we manually set the delay that we want the code to return in. However, once you start getting into more advanced examples, that will be based on something beyond your control. So if there's one thing I want you to take away from this video, the difference between synchronous and asynchronous code is that synchronous code runs top to bottom. Asynchronous code does not run top to bottom. You can also go in, if you go in the JavaScript 2 under week 3, the README of that page actually has a lot of really good information on callbacks, also on async versus sync, if you want to read it in text format and really hammer it home. This stuff gets a bit tricky to wrap your head around, so I really strongly recommend spending a lot of time making sure you're comfortable with what the concept of asynchronous is. There's a couple more async methods that you can play around with if you want. You've also got something called setInterval. It's very similar to setTimeout, except it will run the callback function over and over again. So we can do something like this. So let's just look at the docs. For setInterval method, repeatedly calls a function or executes a code snippet with a fixed time delay between each call. So we can do something like this. We can use setTimeout and our setInterval together. So if we use setInterval here, and we bring this down to 2 seconds, we go back here. So now we can see we got one log there, another log again. So basically every 2 seconds, it's going to log out the word second. Now, if you wanted to play around with this a bit, you could do something like this. So if we go back to the documentation, we can see we get an interval ID from setInterval. And what that interval ID allows us to do is to clear the interval after we're done by passing. So clear interval is another method, and I'll show you how it works here. So we can do const interval equals setInterval, and then we can use this together with setTimeout. Let's give this something. Let's do it much faster. Const. Actually, let's do something like this. Let count 0, 0. We're going to do, we're going to console.log count plus plus. We're going to do our setTimeout. Your interval. Then you can pass the interval as the first argument to clear interval. And then we'll log again. So log the interval. And we'll do that after 5 seconds, let's say. So let's go back here. Let's see what we get. So all of these functions execute in order. So if we think about it, we get our first console.log, define our variable. Our setInterval function gets called straight away, but it takes 5 milliseconds, or not 5, is that 500 milliseconds? Before it gets executed first, which gives this console.log time to execute. Then we hit this setTimeout, but that timer is now waiting for 5 seconds. And this function basically gets to run until this setTimeout finishes, at which point the clear interval executes, canceling the above interval, and then our final message is logged. So it's not often you're going to be writing code like this in the real world where you're doing setTimeouts and setIntervals and composing them together. What you should be taking away from this is these are examples of how asynchronous code works and how it can let us control the flow of information and when things are executed in our code. Again, I'm going to share a link to this, what is the event loop. Understanding the event loop in JavaScript makes learning async code and makes the following lessons in the next module in JavaScript 3 much easier to wrap your head around. So I highly recommend spending the half hour watching that video.